Welcome to Hindsight HacKing. I'm Corey Carter.
And I'm Ron Poole.
Let's get it started.
On this podcast, we've hacked hundreds of entrepreneurs' hindsight to help you, the listener, with better foresight. Now, guys, if you want to know all about what we can do to help you focus on being you, head over to gethhm.com. Keep pushing through those ups and downs that we all will have.
We're still going to have amazing conversations with amazing people. Hindsight hacking boils down to amazing conversations with some amazing people. Welcome back, everyone, to Hindsight Hacking. Today's episode, we have a true party goddess or a profit goddess, the one, the only Miss Marley Majcher. She is the CEO of the Party Goddess, a nationally acclaimed full-service event planning and catering company. And, she's had a few people that she's worked with. You might know who they are. Snoop Dogg, Britney Spears, maybe you know those two. I don't know. Or the profit goddess, Marley is quickly establishing herself as one of the best resources for small business owners and the author of But Are You Making Any Money? A witty and lauded business guide praised by Forbes as a great how-to book for any entrepreneur. So Marley, I am super excited. Ron and I, we've got a little bit of a restaurant background. You'll get to find out. So I want to hear all about this full service event planning. But more importantly, we got to speak to the entrepreneurs that are listening about the book and the Profit Goddess. So first and foremost, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. We certainly have a lot to talk about. Let's put it that way.
Oh, no kidding. I cannot wait. I can't wait to dive in. But before we get too far, Why don't you take a moment to tell everyone a little bit more about you?
Sure. Well, that is, I guess, the backstory, which is like the longest part of my story, because I'm all about, there's a lot of hindsight. Let's just put it that way. But I love the name of your podcast because I was like, oh my gosh, I have like the Library of Congress full of hindsight. This is perfect for me. But I grew up and I still live in Pasadena, California. And I've been here my whole life. And so anybody who knows Pasadena, it might as well be like Connecticut, because it is just very like this buttoned up small little world. And I was here until I went away to college and I got my business degree from Georgetown. And then I did something really unexpectedly because a lot of people that go to Georgetown, end up in law school or running hedge funds or something like that. And I was like, no, I'm going to go into the restaurant business. But that is because I decided to marry a chef, and I'll let you guys decide how much of that story you want. But the bottom line is I graduated, got into the restaurant business. We started a catering company and a banquet operation. And then long story short, then he and I are having drama, shocker, the chef that I married. And I have a series of things that would have derailed anybody. But of course, I'm like, no, I won't give up, no matter what kind of message the universe was giving me. And then finally, I had a really bad skiing accident. And so now, in addition to all the other signs I've gotten, I am now like on crutches and in therapy like 3 days a week. And my dad is like, listen, what are you doing? Like, you love the events. Like, we keep getting the opportunity to partner up with this restaurant. And thank goodness we own the land. And I was like, no, I can't do that. And he's like, but why? You don't even love the restaurant business. Like, you love the events and the decor and all that other stuff that goes with it. So finally, after the skiing accident, I was like, fine, okay. Turns out to be the best business decision we ever made. But I was at a really challenging point in my life and career. And, as most entrepreneurs, if you're in a challenging point in your life, you might as well be a challenging point in your career, and vice versa, because there's that bleed. And so in 2000, I rebranded, that's a very gracious way to put it, into the Party Goddess. And at that point in time, there were, not everybody was having an event planner. Like these days, it's like, oh, big deal. You have an event planner. Who cares? Like everybody has an event planner. And everybody is an event planner. But in those days, it was like if you weren't a big corporate event planner or a big corporation hiring a corporate event planner, or somebody with a huge wedding hiring a wedding planner, everybody didn't just have an event planner. And I was like, listen, I want the space I want to be in is to take all these details of all these, like, the flowers and the food and the staff and the decor and all that, and put that all together and be that one point person, because it was to my advantage, because then I knew things would go well, and the DJ wouldn't be showing up with his underpants like half falling down. And I hung out my shingle as that. But the problem was there were no barriers to entry. Now that's great usually, but it can also be a problem because it meant everybody and their brother, now that you could have like websites for a reasonable price, was also an event planner. And so you have to come up with that dreaded USP, that unique selling proposition. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I am in such a saturated market, LA, New York, two of the most saturated. And how am I going to set myself apart? And I decided at that point, listen, I really need to have celebrity clients, because I was like, that's the one thing that will, do it. And I was always so amazed by this. And because growing up, I had friends who had, a very wealthy background, and, we would be sitting by the pool at spring break or whatever, reading magazines. And I was always amazed that, some of these girls, their net worth, could quadruple anybody in these magazines. Yet they were like, oh, so-and-so uses blah, blah, blah for their skin, or so-and-so just went on vacation here. And I was always listening to these conversations going, freaking A, like just because they're celebrities, they, I guess, have the tickets to the universe. And so I thought, well, I'm just going to jump on that bandwagon, because then I must be a good event planner. And I did. And then, then once you get one, then you get more and more and more. And I thought, this is crazy. And in the midst of it, I wrote a book to solve my own problems, because my business and the restaurant business, talk about hindsight, I had so many things I would have done differently. And then in event planning, since I hadn't really solved the problems that I had made for myself in the restaurant business, in terms of my business model, I knew I had to kind of come up with this new system. And I ended up doing that. And then I wrote a book. And then, people were like, oh, wait, how do you do it? The kind of the usual piece. And that's why then it became this, wait, she's this party goddess, and then it was like, okay, the profit goddess, so that it would fit more neatly under this umbrella. Because otherwise it's like, you have this really creative girl who still does events that are high end, but then, yes, but kind of my next piece is that I want to help other entrepreneurs, not just event planners, but other entrepreneurs kind of get out of their heads and actually like make money in their businesses, because so many people aren't.
Oh, it's so many stuff to unpack there, so much there. But I wanted to call out like the USP. I love the acronym, by the way. When you realized you wanted to get those big clients or those A-listers, right?
Right.
How did you truly just get that first one? And I just wanted to tell a quick story. Like Ron and I, when we launched our podcast, before we launched, we were thinking, okay, who are we going to get on the show to help us as we get through? And anybody watching right now is seeing Ron laugh, because his first thing is, we're going to get Tim Tebow. And I'm like, we don't know Tim Tebow or anybody around Tim Tebow. How are we going to get Tim
Tebow? That's right. That's who I want on the show.
We got people on the show that worked out, but they were not Tim Tebow. So I just want to know, like, how did you get that first celebrity to say yes? Because I agree. Once you get the one, everything else is dominoes. Like that's holds true in any form. Like our podcast, when we got a big person in the online entrepreneur space, then we had people knocking on our door to do it just because of the other person. So,
yeah. So I'm a big believer in, probably because I have really bad ADHD, but in those days I didn't know that, and I didn't know what to do with it. And so I was always a really big, like even in school, like I would have to set my goals and I would have to be very structured. And even when I was in geometry class, I would do my proofs, and I had this special tutor who would do them with me in colors so that I could like pass the test basically. And so I always had to see things. And so then, you read books about manifesting things, and, which in those days was really goal setting. And so I would put stuff on my vision board and I'd be like, okay, well, who are the celebrities I want? And what's really creepy is when I go back, I mean, like I've had goals set from, decades. And when I go back and then I see the like celebrity's face or whatever that I cut out of the magazine that was going to be my client. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, that's so, because you forget, but I do believe that you kind of set that compass. And so I just set this whole list of who I wanted and what their characteristics were, like, were they an A-list actor? Like, what was their deal? And then I created my list. And then, like I do with everything else, I just kind of started like knocking on doors, proverbially, not really physical doors, but I just started being laser focused on, okay, I'm not going to go from here to, the president of the United States, but I'm going to have to lily pad the approach here. And so what I did was started talking to any of my friends who I thought would have a connection. And I mean, these would be loose connections. It'd be like, oh, so-and-so's dad is the accounting firm that does that. And I would just put it out there like, hey, this is what I want to do. And, of course, there's so many false starts and it doesn't work. And then eventually you get somebody, and then you get like a C-lister, who's so obnoxious and thinks they're just the most amazing person in the world. And you're like, okay, I'm going to refine my goal list here because now they need to be like higher on the alphabet and can't be a nightmare. Right. And I just stuck with it. And I just kept like looking like, who was their manager? Who else did they work with? How could I tap it? And then I just was really strategic as you can be when you're, shooting in the dark. But I just went bam, 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 and then started to parlay the celebrity so that I would get the press out of it. Because then I realized, well, it doesn't even matter, if you have the celebrity, if nobody knows it. Like if your confidentiality agreement with them is so tight that you can't say anything, you might as well not have them. Right. So that's how I did it. And that's really how I've done everything in my life is I just like put it right on my vision board. And then, I do forget about it. It isn't like I sit there and like, like your Buddhist monk person who's like, chanting, it's chanting and manifesting. But somehow it does work. And sometimes I need to dust off the pages and get clear again. But yeah, that's how I did it. And then, you're off to the races.
Yeah. No, it's so funny because Corey and I did something similar. And I know Corey was laughing because this happened. We started attracting the wrong people.
Oh, yes, you will.
So we're like, I remember having a conversation with Corey. I was like, I'm not sure what's happening, but I want nothing to do with this type of individual ever again. And it seems like that's all we're getting. And so we didn't like outwardly say we're not taking that type of person anymore. Yeah. However, we changed
ourselves.
Yeah, and we agreed with ourselves. Like, yeah. It's no longer welcoming in the universe. You don't get to give us these people. Right. And guess what? We've not ever got those kind of people again, right?
So it's like so funny. Yeah.
It's so funny. And then the whole manifestation thing, like I can go over and on how this kind of stuff happens, good and bad. Good and bad.
Oh, right? Yes.
Because there's been things that I've manifested that were bad just as much as manifesting which is good. So you have to make sure you're controlling your brain the right way.
And that you're course correcting, because the thing is that just because, so like when I was writing down about these celebrities, similar things happen. Like I mentioned, I would get the like most high maintenance D-list celebrity in the world. And I was like, okay, here's the message here is that I haven't been clear and specific enough about what I want. Now, there's one thing being clear and specific, like saying who the person is that you want, but then there's also like, and I want this type of boom, and being really specific. And what I did find was the clearer I got on what I wanted. Now we all know that how do you know what you want is because you know what you freaking do not want. And that is the easiest way to make that wish list. But you have to keep just going back to and be like, okay, whoops, I didn't clarify that. Whoops, I didn't clarify that. And you get better at it, but it is a muscle you have to practice. I mean, you really have to practice. And sometimes it is not easy to practice. It sounds so silly, like, just cut stuff out of magazines and like, look at them. But when you're not in a good space, I'm like, the magazine. It's like, this is so stupid,
Right.
And then you got to, you have to start there and get yourself out of it. So.
Love it. All right. So I'm pretty sure most of these celebrities are not listening or watching. Never know, but I'm pretty sure.
I'm going to go pretty sure.
So
now, how are you going to attract anything with that kind of attitude. Come on now.
Well, I'm making sure I'm putting it out there that they
should be.
are not
Not only should they be
you to
listening,
pick
they should be
your
watching on YouTube. I'm just gonna say it.
How do you of course. Like, of course they're watching. Hi, Tim. Hello. Why are you not on this podcast? That's the dumbest thing I ever heard. I'm going to manifest Tim Tebow this weekend at like Mr. Chow.
Come on, Tim. Come on, Tim.
There we go. But yeah, I would love just to hear like who's been your favorite before we go talk like real entrepreneur stuff and all that fun stuff. But who's been kind of your favorite and why? I'm sure there's been so many amazing people, but one's got to stand out as just like an incredible person that you almost didn't expect how incredible.
Oh yeah. Well, Pierce Brosnan, probably. I mean, I love that guy. We've done a bunch of different things for him. And everybody would always be like, oh, he's so handsome. He's so whatever. And he is. But he is just so down to earth and so kind and so considerate. And, I'm full disclosure, I'm half Irish. So, maybe that's part of it that I love that whole Irish component. But he definitely has that whole Irish charm going. But he is just really, really considerate, and he's very down to earth. I mean, when you're setting up events and you're doing all this stuff, I mean, there's a lot going on. I mean, people are living their lives and having business deals and calls and all that kind of stuff. And it's very stressful. And he just is a class act through and through. I don't know what else to say. He's generous and he's a class act and he is so polite and he is kind to the person who doesn't speak a lick of English that is clearing the dishes, just as he is to his guest lists I'm always like, I can't even believe I'm looking at you kind of are like, is there anybody that is not like paparazzi, like attractant at this point?
Right.
And then, randomly, I haven't done an event for her, but I've been on her show a couple of times when she had a show, is Marie Osmond. That woman is the nicest person. I mean, you know how like she just looks cheerful and whatever. She is that. And it's so great just to truly see like bright lights in the world, and it's not like she hasn't, and same thing with Pierce. I mean, it's not like he hasn't had plenty of tragedies in his life. Same thing with her. But you know what? They're just a class act. They just have character. I guess that's maybe different than personality because you can tell it just goes deeper. So
that is so true. It's so true. All right. So you mentioned paparazzi. I've got to wonder, there's got to be a fun story of somebody like sneaking into the party that you didn't really expect.
That I didn't how about every time? I mean, there's always somebody sneaking in somewhere,
Right.
And
right.
I mean, that's the nature of the beast, and that's going to continue. Security is going to continue to be the biggest challenge with celebrity things or high profile people just in general. And I called this wasn't a podcast probably, but it was some interview like 8 or 10 years ago. And I'm going to stick with it, that we have not seen the end of drones here. And that's going to be our biggest nightmare because there's so much capability there. And so people are always sneaking somewhere that they shouldn't be, even if it's, by the way, just a waiter sneaking a shot that they shouldn't have of like the interior of somebody's house or something. And I get it. First of all, there's a lot of money paid for stuff like this. Second of all, I get it. It's that kind of thrill and the curiosity factor. But huge part of my job is really protecting the client, no matter what. And that means having, the proposal in somebody else's name and having it, with no address until the very last second, stuff like that. But I remember we were doing something for Britney Spears and it was great in that sense because we were really in charge of like all the aspects of it. And if that is the case, I am just psycho protective. And, everything in my office everything was under different names, the rental orders, everything. So that, because you never know who's going to take a screenshot of something. And so I was so paranoid and I really took my confidentiality agreement with them seriously and was not going to leak any of this stuff. I was not going to say where it was and I was not going to. And the next thing I know, it's like I think it was like the day before I was supposed to pick up the like goodie bags and stuff. And somehow I I think it was the store, somebody told me that the paparazzi, that they knew where I was going to be picking them up. And like, and I was supposed to pick them up and then deliver them to the event site. And I was like, well, no way. So I will pick them up and then I'll deliver them right back to my sweet self, so that there's no way they can follow you, because they'll do anything. And then I was like, yes, okay, got it. And then same thing with security, and we were doing it in a gated community. And so you're like, okay, but I still was worried. Sure enough, the freaking helicopters and all that are there swooping down. I mean, there are little kids there. And I am just like, what the freak? And here's this whole time I'm so paranoid, because I'm thinking, oh my God, they're going to think I did it. And then I find out something like later, like somebody from their team or whatever had supposedly leaked it. I was like, okay, so that's how this game is played, right? Like everybody has an agenda.
The attention, but you want the attention at the same time.
Well, I wanted the attention because it was going well. Sure, I did. But I didn't want the attention to the point that, like, Larry Rudolph or whoever lawyer is going to be on my doorstep going, hi, you violated. If they want to violate it, please violate, But I took my role seriously. But I just remember when I saw those helicopters, my heart and my intestines and everything just went like I didn't do it. But
oh man, so crazy. What a crazy story. All right, so now we got to dive in. How did you make that transition from but that celebrity event planner doing the crazy things of avoiding the paparazzi to writing a book and becoming not only the party goddess but the profit goddess? Like, walk us through that a little bit, and just really, we talk to a lot of authors, and so I'd love to hear kind of your whole just experience with writing that book and getting it out there.
Well, my event planning is very well, at least how we do event planning, because we're not like just meeting planner. I shouldn't say just, but we have an almost 6,000 square foot warehouse, and we build most of our own decor, and that's kind of our secret sauce. So that's a very, very creative thing. And then writing a business book, yes, there are creative components to it, but it is, talk about, right brain and left brain. My goodness. And I've always kind of had that, though. I've always had that weird sort of like, I love art and I love design and I love all that stuff. But then I now love numbers. I certainly didn't used to when I didn't have good ones to love, but now I do. But the whole thing with the book, I don't think the book ever would have gotten written if I was going to one of our industry conventions at the time. It was this international one, and I forget what city it was going to be in, but it was somewhere in the US. And they said, if you taught a class, you would get a free education pass. So I was like, okay. So I submitted like 4 proposals. I was like, great. I will teach a class, and then I'm going to get this, whatever it was, like $1,300 ticket, right? And class is an hour. I'm thinking, check the box. I'm going to have to take the class and have a margarita or martini and call it a day. And I remember my class was one of the first days, and it was towards the end of the day. It was like, let's say 4 to 5. And it was like the room was filling up, and I'm talking, and then it's like standing room only. And then it's like, remember, this topic for me was on, but are you making any money? But it was to get the pass, right? It was not to impart wisdom on the world. Right. I hate to say that. Right. I went in like doing the best I could deliver, but you're talking to the girl who would like get a deposit and then like head to Neiman Marcus. That was kind of my business strategy, right? Like, I need a reward so I can manifest more. And I went through, the components of basic, my book really in the early days. And then there were all these questions, and then there were more questions. And I remember at one point saying, were all of you absent when I gave the bio? Like, I'm the girl that should not be teaching. I said I'm teaching it for the free pass. And I said I'm a train wreck with money. And they were like, and I'm like, and you guys are asking me all these pricing questions. This is the dumbest thing I've ever seen. Like, this is the advice I need to be giving you. And they were like, yeah, we get it, but you're the only one answering our questions. Right. And I was like, what? And then I started to think about it, and I really realized nobody talks about pricing and money and margins. It's like this dirty little secret, like, oh, and I was just going, well, I don't think you're going to come in my backyard and steal my business. Sure, I'll tell you. I'm not sure it's the right way to charge, but I'll tell you if I mark stuff up, or I'll tell you if I charge a flat fee, or sure. And it was just more questions. And I just remember them like, okay, so like, how can we get in touch with you? Or do you have more? Like, do you have a book? And I was like, a book? I was like, I, again, am an hour past my like alcoholic infusion here. No, I don't have a book, nor do I want to write one. Anyway, the demand was there. And one thing I do like is to help somebody if I can. And it was obvious that, good or bad, I was in a position that they could relate to. And so then I ended up, and I'd gone to Georgetown, so I had great contacts. And one of my professors had written a ton of books, and he was like, you can do this, and it was not an easy process for me at all. And which is hilarious because I knew the material like the back of my hand. I mean, I could write 9 more books like right now, just talking to you, but it was tough. It's tough to get out of your head, especially when you keep thinking of like, how's the reader going to be reading it? Like, are they going to get it? Like, I know I get it. Are they going to get it? And that's a really long answer to that.
No, it's so valid. I mean, there's so many times that as the entrepreneur, you're stuck in your own head, and, we call it imposter syndrome, right?
Right.
And it's funny that you're talking about, you went in for something, which was the ticket. Right.
Very clear of something. Yeah.
Right. And you're like, okay, time out. I didn't realize the universe or God is going to have me do this thing to help so many people. And Corey and I, like, we only help people if they want to have an impact in the world. If
right.
you want to just make money, like, we're just not your guys. Like, we are not people that want to help people to just make money, because we learned a long time ago, if you start surrounding yourself with the people that you want to be like, which is the impactors, you will become those people. If we let too many people in and around us that just want to make money, like, we become people we don't want to be.
Well, yeah. No, I mean, there's that whole thing. I think that you become most like the 5 people you're around, 5 people you're around the most. And you really have to watch it. I mean, especially when you kind of like a couple of family members, you like check the box, you're like, okay, I have 2 slots already gone. Like,
exactly. I'm already at 4. I can't have you in my life.
So you're like, I'm kind of tapping out here on the not what I want to be like. And but now I get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about the coaching and everything that you're doing a little bit, because obviously now doing events, I'm guessing, I could be way off, so tell me if I'm way off. With the events, you're the controller, you're the dictator, you're the one that's like, this is, once you figure out what's needed from the guest, then you tell your team and they go execute and you make it happen. But there's probably not a lot of coaching in regards to the guests. Maybe you're like, I don't know, maybe there's a little bit, but then you turn to the business, got the book. Now the Profit Goddess, you're doing one-on-one coaching. So just, tell us about that aspect of the business and how it kind of ties together.
Sure. Well, it ties together in the sense that I am effectively teaching what I do in my day-to-day life. So I'm doing it like a well-oiled machine and, always learning and everything like you do in your primary role as an event planner in my case. And I'm in the trenches with that. And then it's kind of like I step out of the trenches, sort of take a shower, put on my business hat. And then it's like I coach somebody that I just was an hour ago, right? Before it was like Superman got in the shower. And you put yourself in that mindset and you realize it's just, it's a scary place. And so what happens to me is I try to go into empathy mode, instead of like, oh my gosh, this is like the 3rd call where we've talked about this. I try to go, okay. And if I see them making progress, like you talk about people that you don't, you'll work with versus not work with, I thank goodness, knock on wood again, I'm fortunate that I can choose, and so it's like, I just am not going to work with people anymore that don't really want to change. And I think, and it's probably a stereotype, but I think like women and coaching women, especially, like there's this kind of like whine. And I'm as big a chick as there is in terms of every aspect. And like, I love my girlfriends and I, can chew the fat all day long. But when it comes to business, man, it's like, what do you want? How long have you been at it? What are you trying to get? What's holding you back? I mean, I want bam, 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 bam. And I want to get on the next call. And I want to see that you have moved mountains, or not maybe that the mountain has moved, but you have tried 99 things to move it. And you're like, okay, now what? But you have really put in the effort, because that's the only way it's satisfying, right? There's not enough money in the world. I mean, I do well with that, but not well enough to just be like, oh my God, you are a loser. What the frick is your problem? So I can't do that anymore, because as you can tell, I have a filter problem.
No, I love it because anybody that's done coaching, and Corey and I did coaching like in our previous life, along with this online life, there's always someone that needs so this is how I explain it. There's people that need your time and people that deserve your time, right? So there's people that will do all this amazing stuff if you're next to them, holding your hand all the time. And then the people that deserve your time are doing it without you, just based on what you've taught them. And those are the people you actually need to pour into more, but you can't, because you're stuck with the people that are dragging you down.
You got the ball and chain back here, and it's raining, and the cement is like powdery, and now you just made more, and now you're really stuck. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, so true.
100%. I get it. Yeah.
All right. So Marley, you mentioned you've got lots of hindsight to share. You've got lots of it.
Could you tell?
But let's relate it to this. So you've got now a wealth of experience, but also anybody that goes to your websites, the Goddess, the Party Planner, what is it? I'm so sorry.
The Party Goddess is that one, and then the Profit Goddess is the business side, right?
So both of them can see that you are very active on getting yourself out there via a show like this, via TV episode, interview, like very, very active. And us being in the podcast world, we teach people to go be seen, find a way to be seen, get out there. And I think not everybody takes that information and runs with it as much as we would like. And so in hindsight, I'd love to hear your take on just your goals of getting out there and being on other shows and being interviewed as often as possible, trying to find the audience. Like, what have you learned through that process?
So what I've learned is, with every goal, project, new thing I take on, it always starts for me, and I'm sure I know it's different for everybody, but for me, it's throw the mud at the wall, right? Like it's the cut the magazine articles out, like kind of the, like you're a sophomore in high school and you're talking about like what you want to study in college. I mean, you're doing your best, right? To kind of make an educated guess. So for me, when I was like, okay, I want more publicity, whether it's TV or radio or magazines, that kind of thing, I would put, again, very specific points about, an audience size of this or something. And then what I would do is I would continuously course correct, because then all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay. And now I have all these interviews, and now it's like, okay, now I'm just being a full-time interviewee, right? Well, that's not going to pay my mortgage either. So then you start going, and that's when the refining comes back in. It's like, just like the celebrities, where you go, okay, it is not just anybody that somebody has heard of, or it's not just a show anybody's heard of, but they have to have an X amount of followers or X amount of, connections or whatever it would be. And so for me, I just keep drilling down on, like, as I kind of keep going with it, refining what it is I want. But it's really about looking at numbers and ROI. And one of my secret sauces is the ROI of time. Like I always say, like, what's your hourly rate? And people always like, I don't charge hourly. It's like, that's not the point. The point is, I could do this podcast, right? And it's not going to happen tomorrow, but you wait a certain amount of time and then you see results. You're like, okay, I got X amount of signups or whatever you're trying to get. Right. And you then say, oh, guess what? That was amazing. I should do more of that type of podcast. And it's the same thing. What I have really learned too is you have to set your goals. You have to refine your goals and keep coming back to them. But you have to really check your numbers and your output, and sometimes put away your preconceived notions. I don't mean always put away what your gut is telling you, but sometimes I've gotten the best business from not an audience that I thought was going to be the greatest fit. And sometimes you got to go in a slightly different direction. And then, as they say, course correct. And then you just see what are the common denominators that you can replicate. Like, for example, a podcast, or like, what are the shows that seem to deliver really well? Like, were they run by women? Were they run by men? Did they have a male dominated audience? Did they have a female dominated? And when you start breaking that down, that's what I really learned. And hindsight for me would be setting the objective, doing it, and then measuring it, and really having that honest conversation. It's like, oh my gosh, loved that person. I will do the podcast because I like them and as their friend, right? But not because I'm thinking I'm going to get business out of it. If I happen to, okay. So it's just about, time is your only non-renewable resource, right? Mm-hmm. You can make more money all the time, but your time, you can't get back. So I try to be very purposeful about where I spend it and with whom and on what. But that takes discipline and knowing what your goal is in the first place.
Mm-hmm. No, that's so true. Like, my wife and I's new mantra is be intentional. Like, be intentional in your time, in what you're doing and why you're doing it. I love that. And I know there's people like, oh my gosh, I love her. Like, what are you currently working on that people can get involved with you in?
If I tell you what I'm working on, I mean, people, because there are two different questions. What I'm working on right now is I just bought a ranch in a place that I had never even visited. And now I'm becoming a rancher. So I'm building a 20-acre ranch that has nothing on it. And I have a horse, but no barn yet. And we're trying to get it all through the city. And it's costing me so much money, I can't even tell you. And talk about manifesting. Like, this morning I was on my workout and I was like, don't go there. Right? Don't go there. It's going to be fun. And so now I'm all about like sheep and wool but the scraps of wool and how there's this big glut of it in the California market. So I decided I'm going to go to Dublin in a week and a half for the World Sustainability Textile Conference. I don't know one person. I don't know one word of fashion, textile capabilities. And I had to get interviewed to do this thing. And I'm just like, talk about a learning curve. Talk about not knowing one word. Like, I used USP. Well, think of having 500 of the equivalent of that in this field that I know nothing about. I mean, I do in the last 4 months or whatever, but I'm just passionate about it and I love it. And I can't read enough and talk to enough people. And I'm sure I'm going to land in Dublin and they're going to be like, what the fuck? Like, what does this? She's a party planner? I mean, they are like PhDs in soil and I'm like, whatever. I don't even care. I'm going to do it. So that's what I'm working on.
Nice.
So fun. All right. Last question for you, Marley. And why does everyone need to go buy your book? Why do they need to?
That's easy.
Hang out with you, follow you, come into your world. Anyway.
Well, it's a very fun world, first of all. It is never dull. So if you are, it's one of those things where if you are entertained by watching videos of people like remember those America's Funniest Home videos where people are always falling off
crashing
the bed
down the hill
and then tripping, and then that is me 8 times a day. Okay, so that number one, and then it's okay, we're back live. But so that's that answer, right? But as far as why you should buy my book, that's a super easy one. First of all, it's cheap. I mean, I don't know what it is right now on Amazon, but let's pretend it's $14.95 or something. But the point is that it doesn't matter if you are in business yet, if you have a business, if you're an employee, if you're just somebody who is an employee with a manager is having you, give results in a sales component. if you're somebody thinking about getting into business, even if you're just somebody that volunteers your time, here's why. So even if you're a stay-at-home mom, you're like, well, I'm not in business. Why would I need that book? Like, I'm not trying to make any money. Well, I'll tell you exactly why. Because the system is all about what is that ROI, right? What are you putting your time and energy into, and mental, all this stuff, and what are you getting out of it? Now, I don't care what anybody makes per hour or per year, per minute, makes no difference to me. But where I've seen the frustration come in is when they don't know what they're getting out of it and they don't know why. So if you're volunteering even for an organization and, you know, you're the chair and you're the this and, you know, and one of my exercises is to track your time, and you track your time and you say, okay, I go to, you know, 2 meetings a month, and, you know, one of them is in person and one of them is virtual. And you start adding up all that time. And when somebody says, here's your report card, like, you have now spent as chair of this thing for the year, 72 hours of drive time, meeting time. And that's not actually unrealistic. It's like, wait, what? And only then can you replace it. Only then can you say, I'm going to do something different. So the book just sheds light. It sheds light. Then you can toss it. I wouldn't recommend that, but it's practical and it's easy. You can just read a piece, and if it resonates, great, you know, dig in for more. But at the end of the day, I'm like a hacker, you know, I'm like a time hacker and a life hacker. And I just want to get to what's the best way to do something. And I think people like that are hard to beat, because they're always like, you know, pushing through. So there's always something new. There's always a better way. And that inspires me, because otherwise, you know, you cry in your bed and say, listen, it's time for martini. It's 2 p.m.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with a martini at 2 p.m. So that's
careful. I just really don't need that.
8 in the morning. I mean, come on.
Or 8 in the morning. It's 2 o'clock somewhere. So but your book reminds me of one of those books that you have. It's on the shelf. And you know what? Every time you read it is probably something that you needed to hear right then. So it's not something, I agree, I would not toss it. I would keep it on the shelf, because you're going to reread it. And you know, there's those books that you read once a year. Yeah. That's something that you should do with this book. And the link will be in the show notes for sure.
Thank you. Well, the other thing too is, it's like, if I know it's really bad when I take the Bible and I close my eyes and I go, I'm going to pick a page.
Oh my gosh.
And like get inspiration. But you could do that with my book. If you're like, I'm really stuck and I don't know what else to do, be like, okay, maybe this crazy girl can help. And just pick a page. So yeah, maybe I hope like nobody sends you hate mail that I just compared myself to Jesus. I swear.
No. That no one took it that way. That you gave a good example. Good example. No, but we
are enablers.
Yeah, exactly. We are very good enablers. So if you know Tim Tebow, please let him come on the show. And
you never know. I'm going to manifest him. I am Tim Tebow. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Not sure how, but I'm working on it.
He needs to be here. So anyway, we appreciate the time, and thank you so much for taking it with us today. And we are excited to have had you on the show. So we appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. Okay, have a good one.
You too. Bye.
Bye.
All right, Ron, what's going on? Another opportunity to talk about visibility, but more specifically to online events. So I know you and we stopped the recording. We were able to talk to Marie more, and I could see a partnership there in the future. But first of all, before we get too far ahead of ourselves, we got to have a takeaway or two, as I'm sure you've got them.
Two. All right. Know your strength. Have the right people surrounding you, right? Like we've said that multiple times. She touched on it today. Super, super important to know what you're good at and where you need help and the people that you need to bring on board to help you do that. That's one. The other one is reuse your content. Reuse it. Calendar, record, reuse. That easy.
Yes, definitely. And to add on to what I loved about that, sharing the strengths, like knowing your strengths, right? I loved how she shares the strengths with clients. Like you know, graphics, and we've had this conversation with clients, like graphics, great, grammar be hard, right?
Grammar be hard.
And I love that. And so it's just a reminder, like just share your strengths, share. They came on board with you, so share with it to move forward. But more importantly, something we teach and talk about with everyone with any kind of podcast or growth that they want, consistency is key. So be consistent with where you want to be, find it, then figure out a way to get consistent and then take the action. But consistency is key to growth. And I love that Marie, talked about it. So, all right, everyone. Thank you so much. We will talk to you again soon.
Bye, guys.
Did you know that Hindsight HacKing Media Agency, we do all things podcast from launch? If you're already doing 10,000 downloads in a week, we handle everything. All you have to do, record it and forget it.
Guys, if you're launching a podcast, get with these guys. I could not honestly hit the charts without them.
I'm not getting paid for this, but working with both of you, the professionalism and the system that you guys had to launch the podcast, you guys killed it.
We want to help the impactors create an impact by just letting you be you and not worry about all this other crazy stuff. Connect with us. All the links will be in the show notes. See you next time. Go create an impact.